Hello there ladies and gentlemen, TX141 here, also known as Paul, bringing you another Ace in the Day gameplay for the arcade mode of War Thunder. In today's instalment, I shall be reviewing the Ki-84 Hayate, also known as the Ki-84 Mark 1A. To provide you with a brief historical overview of the aircraft and the variant depicted here in War Thunder, the Ki-84 can have its history traced back to the final week of December 1941, whereby the Imperial Japanese Armed Air Service, the Kogen Koka Homebrew, was in consultation with the Nakajima Aircraft Company for the production of the successor to the Ki-43 Hayabusa, another Nakajima design. Nakajima were tasked with creating a successor which would be superior to any British or American fighter currently in production, have manoeuvrability equal to that of the Ki-43, an equivalent top speed to and climb rate of the Ki-44 Shoki, have sufficient armour protection for the pilot, along with self-sealing fuel tanks, the final two items being the exception, not the norm, to Japanese aircraft in general. Nakajima responded as of February 1942, putting their design forward for the Ki-84 as it was to be known, with the first prototype rolling off the assembly line of March 1943, and entering its test trials as of April the same year. These test flights ended as of March 1944, with pilots commenting that the plane was absolutely exceptional. Powered by a IJAAF 45 Type 4 engine, a radial engine providing 1,825 horsepower, the plane could reach a top speed of 388 miles per hour or 624 kilometers an hour, and reach an altitude of 5,000 meters in the space of 6 minutes and 26 seconds, making it the most powerful Japanese fighter in production to date. What's more, armed with two 12.7mm Ho 103 machine guns based above the engine, and two 20mm Ho 5 cannons in the wings, this was to form the basis of the first production variant of the Ki-84, known as the Ki-84 Co. Entering production as of April 1944, with difficulties in developing the engine also meaning that production was bric-a-brac up until May-June 1944, the Ki-84 saw service all the way round to the end of the war in the Pacific, i.e. August 1945. The difficulties in producing the engine, and indeed the aircraft, only got worse as the war developed, thanks to dwindling resources in Japan and indeed a lack of overall skilled development on the production line. Nonetheless, the Ki-84 variants that rolled off the assembly line, with the Co being the most notable and numerous, all saw significant combat action and were found to be more than a match for the F-4U Corsair and the F-6F Hellcat, with a number of rookie American pilots mistaking this aircraft for a Ki-43, only to their detriment. Indeed, the Ki-84 goes down in history as one of the final Japanese fighters to enter the war, and perhaps one of the finest. With that being said, how exactly does the Ki-84 Co handle in War Thunder? Well, as we dive down behind a series of enemy fighters attacking a B-17, we pick on a P-47D Thunderbolt very quickly, followed through by a Yak-9K to achieve a critical hit, and finally we catch a Bf-109E3 right at the tail end of our pass, to achieve 2 kills and 1 critical. As we break away, we realise that in this airfield domination match on the map Mozdok, we have the following setup. 300 meter gun convergence, and I will come on to that very shortly, with air target ammunition for our machine guns, thanks to the fact that the air target belt has a good mixture of intermediate adjustment incendiaries, which are liable to set targets on fire, and armour piercing incendiary rounds, which set targets on fire and break through to key components such as fuel tanks and engines. For the 20mm cannons, we have the stealth belts, the reason being that these belts consist of the majority of high explosive rounds and 1 Reactis round, making for a devastating punch, as seen here on the Spitfire Mark 5B, more so than say the Omnipurpose or the Armoured Targets belts. The reason for our 300 meter gun convergence is because, as the cannons are mounted in the wings and we are flying a fighter, we want to get close to our opponents as we would normally do mid-dogfight, and therefore make the most of our cannons at this close range, with most of my dogfights usually concluding at a distance of roughly 200 to 400 metres. Finally, we have a 30-minute fuel load, although this is standard to all aircraft I fly in arcade mode. With our setup discussed, we now come on to the key positives of the Ki-84. As we have already seen, this plane handles nicely, as shown in our original boom and zoom energy dive and our conclusive pass on that Spitfire Mark 5B. Right now we are employing our incredible climb rate, and one which is probably the best for its battle rating of 4.7, or at least equal to that of the Focke-Wulf 190 D9, which I highlighted in my review of that as being probably the best. And really, this plane works very well on the level in terms of acceleration and its overall ability to reach a high speed. As a result, you're looking at an aircraft here which can build up its energy and its position in the skies very quickly by comparison to a good portion of its opponents, such as the A6M5 Raisin, the Ki-41 Hay, the Spitfire F Mark 9, the Messerschmitt 109 F4 and G2, and finally the United States F-8F-1 Bearcat, a plane which can be easily beaten in this aircraft if employed in the right manner. However, to combine with our overall premise of this being a brilliant energy fighter and overall fighter, we must realise that this plane is also quite the interesting turn fighter. It cannot outturn planes such as the Spitfire, nor can it outturn the Japanese Raisins, although all other aircraft it will be able to turn with or outturn, including the Yakovlev Yak-3 up at medium altitudes of 4,000 metres to 6,000 metres or more, and the British Typhoon Mark 1B, along with the American P-63 King Cobras, making this quite a deadly opponent. Therefore, we say that this plane is very versatile in terms of overall manoeuvrability and energetic performance. Again, we're up at 3,000 metres altitude and a speed of 555 km an hour, which is a speed which is very quickly built up, as already highlighted, and really makes this plane comparable to the Focke-Wulf 190 D9. However, the differences come when we look at the negatives of this aircraft. Whilst this plane can accelerate to a top speed very well and maintain overall control and manoeuvrability at high speed, once you go past 750 km an hour, the roll rate begins to seize up, as depicted slightly in this pass on a Wellington Mark III. As we can see, we're easily able to come onto target thanks to the overall large wingspan and therefore fuselage size of the Wellington. As we put our nose up, we realise that we are not in any trouble whatsoever, so we decide to continue through and attack an enemy I-185 M82 and an F-82 Twin Mustang, both trying to harass a friendly Ki-49 Mark II. Both of the opponents obviously being unaware of our presence, as we're about to see. We converge on the F-82 and then the I-185 as they break around and try to get away. With 6 kills in the bag, we now use our exceptional energy retention to maintain a speed of 460 km an hour and gradually dropping to break away from the enemy airfield, with opponents such as a Yakovlev Yak-9 and an LA-7 both trying to keep up but finding futility in their attempts. However, we were moving on to the negatives, and we have already said that the roll rate is compromised at the highest of speeds, by comparison with the D9, which maintains its roll rate a little bit better. Additionally, this plane on the level will not be able to maintain the higher top speed by comparison with, say, the F-8F Bearcat or the Focke-Wulf 190 D9. This plane can reach a top speed of roughly 700 km an hour, yet these two planes, which I've mentioned, can reach top speeds beyond this. And so as a result, expect that they will be a little bit faster than you, and so if you're not able to tie these opponents up in turn fights, they may actually get away from you and therefore the better of you by being able to continue with boom and zoom passes where you try to chase them in their wake. What is more, as perhaps depicted already, this plane actually has quite sluggish elevator response, something which I didn't realise at first and is quite a hidden vice. Especially if you're travelling at a speed of roughly 400 km an hour or more, you'll find that when you try to pull this plane up, either on the level or in a dive, it is quite difficult to do so. And so I would be careful with flying low to the ground in a dive, as you may find you come a lot closer to the ground than you originally expected. Still, these are the two major problems in terms of the performance of the aircraft, and the one major problem to follow on from this would be the layout of the armament. Much like the Ki-61 Hay, the fact that you have two 20mm cannons in the wings means that, upon reflection, you will need to hit your opponents at convergence, especially when attacking fighters and attackers, the smaller targets by comparison with bombers, in order to get your cannons onto target. If I was to fire at a target such as a Hurricane, as depicted in front of us, at say 600 metres, where my convergence is set to 300, I have to expect that I will not be able to hit my target efficiently, and I will have to consume a lot of ammo and perhaps even aim off centre to hit my target. However, this works rather well when attacking larger bombers, as depicted against that Wellington Mark III. And so this is both a vice and a virtue, but for your intended role of attacking fighters and therefore being a dogfighter, this is going to be quite the vice. As we break around on a Hurricane Mark II, unable to keep their nose up, we take them out and force their rockets to fly underneath us for our 7th kill, and then break away from an A410, going directly out of spawn, and build our energy in terms of altitude up once again. Seeming to be at ease in a situation which could be perilous in a plane such as the Spitfire Mark 16. Simply because we have the overall flexibility which we can show off as long as we've got some speed to our plane. In terms of altitude performance, this plane performs well at all altitudes, although I have a preference of flying roughly 4,000 to 7,000 metres altitude, just because up at these altitudes I seem to find the plane comes to life a little bit more, and you can go up against most of the opponents which will match you for your battle rating. Indeed, this is a plane which, when facing Messerschmitt 109 G10s, Focke-Wulf 190 D12s, Spitfire, LF Mark 9s, along with other higher battle rating fighter types, this is a plane which can match up to those quite easily without fear of retribution. Having broken off from that enemy P-63 King Cobra, we come onto the back of the enemy 410A, which we saw earlier. We managed to take off their wing, but we can already see by firing at larger distances we have to put in a lot more ammunition thanks to the wing mounting of the cannons. The machine guns are good to act as softeners or tracer belts, but other than that, really, the machine guns lack the punch by comparison with the cannons, as would be expected. I've said about the altitude performance. How about the overall performance of this aircraft with speed? In all instances, you really want to keep the speed of this aircraft above 350 km an hour, and a speed range of 400 to 650 km an hour, one of the largest I've ever discussed, although comparable to the Focke-Wulf 190 D9, will suit this plane well, as we go into a head-to-head with a Yakovlev Yak-9K, whereby we both intend to go into a snap roll, as we both think alike. However, as we can see here, the Yak-9K might be quite manoeuvrable, thanks to its medium to high altitude presence as a Yakovlev Yak series fighter, but we're the more manoeuvrable opponent, able to get behind them very quickly thanks to a combination of going into a loop, or an Immelman, and overall rudder response, and we put them down accordingly. Indeed, if we'd just gone into a turn fight there and tried to turn around on them on the level, we would have been able to get behind them just a little bit faster than they would have been able to turn in on us. So as a result, you've always got the flexibility to have level turn flights, use the rudder and the elevators, or just simply apply the rudder to turn yourself around on the spot or go into a split S. There's very little for you to worry about. You have the ultimate flexibility in this aircraft. With that being said, we have a Focke-Wulf 190, the P-63, the one from earlier, coming towards us, and we use a snap roll to break out the way of the incoming fire from the A4, connecting with a very short amount of rounds from probably the machine guns and perhaps one of the inner board 20mm cannons. The P-63 tries breaking after us, but I believe their engine has actually just been wiped out, and the Focke-Wulf's intentions have been declared against the H-6K and the B-17. As we loop round to try and catch our opponents, we notice the P-63 heading towards the ground and the Focke-Wulf quite a way away, a plane which we cannot catch simply because we don't have the higher top speeds as mentioned earlier. Nonetheless, returning to our point about performance with speed, so long as you keep your speed up high, as I said in that 400 to 650 km/h speed range, you will be fine. Let it drop below 300 km an hour, however, and this plane becomes quite sluggish, much like the F-8F Bearcat, although a little bit less so, and so you may still have the competitive edge. And with that being said, let us look at some post-game stats. Hence, in reflection we can see that our 9 kills and single assist allowed us to earn 31,544 silver lions. On top of this we earned 2,044 research points, all going towards our research on the A6M5 Otsu Razor. We conclude this view of the Ki-84 Co by realising that it is probably the definitive fighter for its battle rating of 4.7. No other plane is able to show such versatility in terms of energy fighting and turn and burn style of play. If you cannot outturn your opponent, then you can simply employ your incredible climb rate and decent acceleration on the level in order to play an energetic style and leave your opponents dwindling in your wake. However, For those who are looking to beat a Ki-84 Co, there are two approaches. Either make its speed drop below 300 km an hour and force it to lower altitudes whereby its responsiveness becomes a little bit heavier, and you will be able to outturn it and outperform it in general. And this can be achieved in planes such as the Yakovlev Yak-3, the A6M5 Razor and the Spitfire F Mark 16. The second approach is actually to attack this plane head on at long distance, whereby planes with centre mounted armaments such as the Messerschmitt 109 G2 will have a field day simply because they can bring their armament, their 20mm cannon usually in the propeller hub, to greater effect onto target, by comparison with the Ki-84 Co's two 20mm cannons based in the wings, which work best at convergence. As we are about to see, by comparison to the rest of our team, we came third, simply because we used our plane in an energetic style of play to begin with, making a significant number of boom and zoom passes on a multitude of targets, and on occasion walking away with double kills, to show the overall effectiveness of this plane and to suppress the enemy and make them feel less comfortable around their own airfield. The latter stage of the game saw us develop into a turn fighter, especially against that Yakovlev Yak-9K, whereby we utilised our overall manoeuvrability and ability to exchange manoeuvres thanks to our strong overall nature in the ailerons, rudder and elevator to bring ourselves to bear and therefore our cannons onto target. As a result, for those who are looking for a flexible fighter which is able to mix up the playstyle and make its opponents quake in its wake, all the way up to a battle rating of 6.0 in my opinion, Fantastic Frank over here is the fighter for you. And so I've been TX141, and if you've enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future War Thunder videos on my channel. Yet until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care and good luck in the skies.